Right, so we are live. So for those of you who are watching live, welcome. For those of you watching on the record, welcome again. So today, my guest is Glenn Middleton. So Glenn, I always do the same format. I never introduce my guest other than their name, oftentimes to pronounce it incorrect, but I don't think I've had any trouble with your name there.
No,
And I ask my guests to introduce themselves, just to give some highlights, some background, some context that you think is relevant, because I might hit the low points and not really, I miss out on some of the high ones. So just over to you and to introduce yourself.
perfect. Thank you. So I'm Glenn. It's normally pronounced with a lot more N's at the end. Like the more agitated people are with me, it's like Glenn. It happens quite a lot. So 2 N's at least is important. But I'm a husband, father, massive nerd. Most recently, a coach, musician, all of the things. Sort of scattered interests. I've successfully failed in education, which has changed the way that my journey has happened, and has meant that I've come to education from a really different angle. But as I'm sure we'll touch upon, that's why I'm enjoying it so much, and I got into coaching to help people sort of reframe their challenges and the difficulties they have.
Oh, amazing. There's even in your intro, there's so much I kind of align with, because I had, so I mean, we'll get into your job. So, but just some context for some people listening or watching. So we connected through LinkedIn, and I found you very interesting, and I said, oh, let's have a conversation. And one of the things that you said to me is, oh, I don't have a massive following. I'm still learning and stuff like that. And one of the selfish reasons that I wanted to speak to you was for exactly those reasons, because I've kind of been obsessed about business for a long, long time. Kind of wanted to create my own business, but didn't know what that was. Some people have told me that you're obsessed with business, but have no idea of the product. And I think that's right. But I've been fascinated very much around um, how business works, different ways of doing things. Um, and I've often looked at these, high performers, or these people that are celebrated, put on pedestals, or you'll see in magazines or whatever. And where I started from, I thought, oh, I could never get there. And you're talking about billionaires, etc. And I always missed that first step. I always thought, okay, I've got to get there. I've got to be successful overnight. But it all starts with that step. And over the years, I'm slowly just trying to make those little steps. And I think what's super important is that I see so many people wanting to start a business or break away from what they're currently doing. Um, but they would probably be stuck in the situation where I was. They saw these people up here and they think they're there or even low, and so it's great to have someone who's on their journey, starting it, has figured some stuff out, but still figuring other stuff out. And that's, again, why it was a selfish thing that I wanted to see and understand where you are on your journey, what's working, what's not working, why you've done it, etc. So that's a bit of context. So let's dive in. So you're currently still working, right? That's what I understand?
Yep. Full-time employed.
Okay, and you're doing coaching on the side.
Yep. In the other hours that I'm awake.
Okay, and you also have a young daughter, right?
Yep. And an 18-month allergic to all of the things in the world daughter,
Oh,
which
wow.
is fun. Yesterday, in fact, we spent the day in A&E after having emergency rush to the hospital in an ambulance. So
Jeez.
it's fun.
Wow.
She's amazing, but terrifying.
Yeah. That's everything, is it? Like, so allergies, the first thing that goes to my head is like peanuts or something, but it's...
Yeah, well, we're in the process of finding it out. We've been through like private healthcare, we've been through the local NHS, we've been through sort of complementary therapies, and we're just trying to sort of patch together this sort of level of support that our daughter needs, and there's a sort of interesting similarity in the way that my daughter has additional and sort of non-standard needs, in that she can't eat a lot of food, or she doesn't sleep very well, and she was brought into the world through emergency C-section, and that potentially meant that she came out a little bit crumpled. But her non-standard needs mean that it's kind of really hard to find the support that we need for her. And there is a lot of generalists, like GPs, have got to know so much, but they have to know so much about so many things, they tend not to know a lot of the depth.
Yeah.
And when I say that there's similarities in that, that's a massive echo of like my education, for example. Like the general education was fine, but not specialized and not tailored enough for my individual requirements. And this is a thing that I start to that I think I learned from being a business analyst, is that there are a few key mental models that just reflect in lots of different places, and that sort of needing to build your own patchwork of support is one of the things that I keep seeing.
Oh, that's amazing. So it's obviously not ideal for the situation with your daughter, but it's great that you're finding ways. It takes a while, but yeah, I hope you find that sooner. Let's dive into that whole patchwork of things, because this is very interesting for me. So a big part of business has been, I've seen, is that even when I tried to start business, it was a way of creating a framework to sell to people, come up with some fancy title that people want, that people go, oh, that's amazing, and it's a framework. More recently, I found, like you said, this patchwork, and I found that I don't necessarily give advice. If people ask for certain things, I think it's about understanding the person in themselves. And this patchwork of things, I think there's some core essentials that we need, from a physical point of view and a mental point of view. But within there, I think there's many different things that we can do. So I'm going to take exercise for example. So people say, I want to exercise. And the immediate thing is, I need to go and smash it at the gym, or I need to go and run a marathon. The reality for me is, no, what you need to do is do something that you feel that you can keep on doing, that's exercise, and that you enjoy it. Because if you can find some enjoyment in it, and enjoyment can be quite a loose term, as in it's just fun, you get something out of it, you feel good, then do it. So I see gardening as exercise. And people will go, well, no, but if I go in the garden, I'm pulling up weeds, I'm bending down, lifting up, and you can make it fun, but people think it's got to be all these extremes, and they kind of discount all of the other things around that can be exercise.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I have a similar perspective on like learning, the way that people learn, and I think that things like watching endless crap seasons on Netflix or whatever it might be gets a bad reputation. But there's two things about that are really important. The rest ethic is as important as work ethic, because anyone that's ever like had burnout or been close to burnout can tell you that it's a horrific thing and you should avoid it at all costs. So like rest is important, but also the seasons that people watch on Netflix, like there's been a huge increase in people that want to be forensic scientists, which is not a bad thing. That's a great thing, in fairness. There are lots of people who have learned about like managing their money or flipping houses and all of these things that are just they almost feel disposable, but they're giving people different ways to think about things, and things like Shark Tank are great for that, or Dragon's Den, wherever you are located. But it's people picking up their own education through these sort of watched experiences, and I don't think they should be discounted at all. I think the fabric of education is really important. The thing that frustrates me is when it needs to be validated by certificates and grades. I feel like that's a bit of an archaic way to judge someone's competency, and it's quite myopic. I feel like we disregard some people's excellence because they haven't fit in the right containers. And I think that's something that we're going to need to work on as we sort of evolve.
Yeah. So I heard this this thing years ago on a podcast, and it stuck with me. It's just in the school system, basically, nothing has evolved. So if aliens came down, I don't know, they said that 300 years ago, and then they come back down today, they'd go, nothing's changed. But if you did the same thing and looked at cars, everything's evolved. And the way that we are connected, the way that we understand ourselves, the way that we learn has evolved so much. So it's for me, the school system doesn't work anymore. 30 kids and one teacher standing in front of a room, just telling, and you're supposed to internalize that information. And especially now, having young kids myself, I realize that there's this thing that they've got to sit still for a long time, and they don't naturally do that. Their maybe attention is not always that. They're not the same personality, but one is more physical, loves to move, does a lot of gymnastics, could probably learn better if you told her to do a handstand and then do the times table. It would, if you combine those sort of skill sets, I think it would be a lot easier for her. But just to sit down in a chair, she's stimulated by anything external, and to sit and do that is quite difficult for her. And for me, I think definitely the school system, needs to change in some way. And I know there's some specialized schools, etc. But let's go back to like you said about school and grading, etc. Because the thing that I did okay at school. I really failed in my A levels. I wasn't really interested. I thought I could just coast it. But I wasn't really interested in school. It wasn't great. I had a small amount of bullying, and just wasn't great for me. But that doesn't mean that I'm silly, stupid, or whatever you want to call it. I'm actually very intelligent, but you give me a subject like business, give me a subject like talking to you, no problem, I can do it. But it's that you're doing mathematics, you're doing a language or English or whatever, geography, I don't know. Again, I don't know what the school curriculum is anymore, but it's like this pass fail thing. And it's I felt like I did okay, but I didn't feel very special. But we're all special, and I think the message you can get through school tells you one thing, and that can bleed into your career and the rest of your life. So there's a lot of words, but what's your take?
Yeah, I firstly, the teachers that I had, I feel nothing but gratitude at the way that they tried to manage me, who was not ideal for that situation. So I talk about that education failed me, but I don't think the educators failed me. I think they did all they could in their arsenal to actually help me to focus, to be better, to reach my potential, those sorts of things. But the system itself it feels like it's designed for obedient, like well behaved, like these are all good things, right? The system is designed to help everyone form in a similar way so that they can then progress into work, and then progress through work, and then buy bigger things and bigger houses and bigger cars and all those sorts of things. Like that model makes sense on paper, but as you mentioned, it's kind of antiquated now. That's not the model that we see in business. That's not what we're seeing in people's career trajectories in corporate world. People don't want that anymore, and it's the lack of almost customization to the content. And I was reading recently Poor Charlie's Almanac, Charlie Munger's sort of a list of his speeches, receptions and things like that. And the way that he speaks about it was really interesting. It sort of changed the framing for me, in that the general education system is a good way to teach people a lot about a lot. So people like learn basic mathematics and learn basic English and those sorts of things. And if you were taking someone that didn't have an education and you wanted them to start a business, a lot of the models that you would teach them are the models that you pick up in sort of secondary school or junior school to secondary school. So I sort of understand now why we did such disparate and random things. Like just putting letters in mathematics just threw me at the time. Like, just stop confusing things. Things are already confusing, and now I've got to find why we're doing numbers here. Like, and I used to get in trouble because I would challenge, like, but how does this make any, like, what is this for? I'm happy to learn it. I haven't got a problem consuming the content. I just kind of need to know the practical applicability of it. Like, how am I going to ever need this? If someone said, let's talk about Pythagoras. Pythagoras is the reason that the frets on a guitar are spaced the way that they are. That's based on the Pythagorean theory. If someone had connected those things and said music is very related to mathematics, you would have had my undivided attention for as long as you were talking. But because, like you say, there's classes of 30 and 40 and 50, and you are given a specific thing that you need to teach, and you need to tick that box, otherwise you're a bad educator. There isn't that capacity for people to tailor it to engage people.
Yeah.
The best teachers I've found are the ones that are engaging, like just love helping people connect the dots.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to happen more in the digital world. And we've already seen like how much people can learn from YouTube when it's something that, like, it could be a kid learning a cup song, but how much attention and focus they put on learning how to do this song, like, it's remarkable. We should be encouraging that. I think the many ways that people can learn now is only great. It's only useful for people developing further in their own ways, but doesn't help them fit in the boxes, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's so I never ever thought about mathematics and music because they are two separate subjects in my mind. But that again goes back to how I think we could learn. So if you taught me about, I was always obsessed about money, not necessarily having it, but just like how it works and, you know, counting and stuff like that. If you'd applied that to, you know, like graphs and stuff like that, it would have been a lot more interesting. Or you say, okay, you know, discounts on a product or something like that. You know, it used to be, okay, you've got 4 apples, you know, you sell one, or like how many you got left. But if you start with the big explanation, you know, put the emphasis on the beginning and you know, and relate it. But like you say, that takes time to understand who's in front of you, right? Because you know, 30 kids, you can't tailor 30 ways necessarily. But I think this upfront awareness of how we are, who we are, how we best learn. And again, I think that's a tricky thing to do because we're still evolving at that age anyway. We don't quite understand. But I think there are certain characteristics that do pop out, and you can say, oh, okay, when it comes to this, yeah, I can just endlessly apply myself. And then you go, okay, can you translate that against the subject? Because ultimately you're going to have much better results, right? Like you as a person, you as a teacher, and you as a school, because, you know, that's the ultimate, right? That's, yeah.
And there was some interesting artifacts of the adoption of AI, in that there's obviously a lot of contention around people, students using AI to do their like papers, to write papers and essays and those sorts of things. And I was watching, I think it was a roundtable with educators talking about how they can change the way that things work. And the point was made that it's not actually the stuff on the essay is irrelevant. The mechanism that we're teaching when we're asking people to do that is the research, the being able to reteach a subject and sort of learn it again, which is like when you teach something, you learn it twice, right? Is a classic saying. So you're encouraging people to do something that's hard, boring, and a bit shit. Writing an essay that develops your brain to be able to do difficult things, knowing that you get a reward at the end of it. You are better at communicating ideas, and you get more concise about the way that you present ideas and convince people. You're able to do that, and you're able to hit word counts, and you're able to do all of these things that are super useful for when you go into a job of any form. Like we were speaking before about starting your own business, and there are just a million things that you need to know how to do. And by not going through education and not learning to do the difficult things, like send an email asking for an extension on a paper, is so easily transferable to this project needs a little bit more time to get over the line. There are so many things like that that I think there are great things that we get in education. We need to really design the new system of how education works. I think it's proven that the natural sort of organic growth of it doesn't get us very far. Like we can't just keep pumping money into getting people more 7s, 8s, and 9s in the new world rather than C's, B's, and A's. Like that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a friend, and she lives in Singapore, and her kids go to a like a private school, but they question all of this stuff. That one of the things is about the grades for university, and they say the grading system isn't actually accurate, and they're trying to change it. I can't remember the details of it. Maybe I should get her on this, and I'd understand a bit more about it. But it was very interesting, and what I liked. So I have this all or nothing thinking. So when I think about the school system, I think, oh, I'll throw it all out. But the reality is, what you're saying is there's a lot of good. I'm just thinking, the social interaction, being around others, understanding, how things work, and just there's a lot there. It's not we throw it all out. It's just, okay, what are we missing? What needs to change in order to bring us into not a better world, but just to maximize the learning capacity, the usefulness for individuals, and for the world of business. And I guess this leads me on to the point about thinking differently. And this is again one of those things that I wanted to talk to you about, because of the way it's worked for you. You take these concepts and from one side and apply them to the other, and I find that very useful, because historically that's never really the case. So I've worked in banking for a long time, and you kind of just stick with the ways it's done, and I'm like, okay, you never look left or right in other industries. You never go and investigate it. And I remember I worked in one of the companies, and they were super excited because they'd hired someone from Formula One to come and work at the company. And there was a big buzz around it. And the guy lasted about a year, and then he left. I never met him, but I was like, oh, okay, is it because it's, I think to shift a whole industry, isn't just done by one person. You need quite a lot of momentum and open-mindedness. And when you have certain industries, we are very close-minded. Like we think that we're open-minded, but oftentimes we're not. So it's great that we have people like you that when things haven't worked for you, you've gone through this system of, okay, well, this over here, actually they can work. And I think more people like you will help us sort of challenge that thinking. But do you want to just go into a bit more detail? How does that work for you? Do you see it that way, or does it just come to you like you're thinking it? Does it make sense in your head, or yeah?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's so my love of business, there was sort of a few things retrospectively that I can look back on and say that was interesting. One of them was doing stuff that you shouldn't do at school. So one of my friends had a link to a computer game called Dope Wars, which is as bad as it sounds, where you are simulating a drug dealer and you have all of the different drugs and you need to figure out a way to sell these to certain areas, and that increases your profit or like takes away from your top line. So that's a really horrific way of me understanding like profit and loss columns, like P&Ls properly.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something that I would bring up if I was interviewing for a bank, but it's an interesting education nonetheless.
Yeah.
And then I studied music at university, and we had every week we had hour-and-a-half lecture on music business. And I've always been punk mindset, anti-authority, not interested in the systems. And what that taught me was the systems are really useful to know how the thing works, because otherwise you're just rebelling against nothing and making your own life difficult, it was a difficult lesson to learn, to be honest. So I had to realize that I wasn't the smartest person in the room and that I should probably learn from the structures that exist. But also, there was a lot of emphasis on sort of guerrilla tactics when you're doing marketing. Like a good example is super unethical, but Red Bull leaving empty cans of Red Bull around, I think it was Liverpool or Manchester, before the official release, and people clocked on that there was lots of empty cans, so they must be popular, it must be a good drink. And then when they started selling them, they sold a lot because everyone was hyped by the fact that they kept seeing the rubbish all around. Now again, super unethical, but that sort of creative way of flipping things on its head and thinking slightly differently, and almost using that punk mindset of like, this is fully against the rules, but it's kind of within the rules. Yeah. That just blew my mind. That was exciting. So then when I put music down for a while and realized that if I could dedicate my life to making money out of music, which meant teaching kids who didn't want to learn how to play the guitar, and then figure out why they hadn't practiced week after week. I didn't want that for my life. Or be a session musician. I was in like 6 bands at one point, playing live left, right, and center, and that was chaotic. Or I could write music that I didn't love but was kind of popular, and again that just sapped all of my energy away from music. So I decided that I wanted to love music still, so that means it can't be my job. So then I got a job, a quite unquote boring job. But everything I learned within that, I tried to tie back to how I could use it to sell records. So like working in customer service, it was all about like making good relationships with like business development managers and like people who I'd be regularly talking to. So I was trying to learn these skills so I could sell music on my own at one point and not give over my conscience to the big bad music industry. So I kind of used classic business to teach me those things so that I could build up this theoretical plan of eventually selling records. So that's kind of where I started using it in the wrong way. And then I just got more interested in creative problem solving. There's a chap called Edward de Bono, who came up with the term lateral thinking, and is a very mechanically different in the way that he has exercises that you follow, and you follow them quite strictly, but you come up with a huge amount of random output. And those sort of random outputs, the idea of lateral thinking is that it takes you out of your default thinking and plops you in a different thought space altogether, so that you can think unconstrained and you can be more relaxed. So it was within sort of that world that I learned that structure is really good because you can riff on structures, and that's where creativity comes from. Like, creativity relies on structure rather than is completely separate from it. And that was a massive lesson for me.
Okay. It's we were talking obviously just before we went live, and I was saying that how I like structure. So
Mhm.
I think for all of my life, I felt that I liked structure, and my life needed to be 100% structure, because it gave me a way to be consistent, and I would see results in some way. And it gave me a sense of security inside me that, okay, everything's okay. And I found it difficult when that routine would go away, it was interrupted. But recently, I would say maybe over the last 5, 6 years, I started to realize that I need this, uh, almost, it's like 3 weeks of consistency, 1 week not, for cool stuff to happen or different stuff. Um, and then I don't need that week to be any more than a week, because then it impacts how I show up and how I can be consistent. So, I was mentioning about eating. I can follow a healthy um, eating patterns. I don't necessarily like the word diet because people think you've got to do that to live. But if you're just eating the good stuff, that comes from going and buying the right things, not buying the sweets and treats and having them on show where my mind's going absolutely crazy. But having that 1 week off at the end allows me this kind of freedom just to almost go back into that cycle of consistency. Any more than that, then I lose my ability to go back to the sort of healthy eating, exercise routine. So, but it's strange how that sort of shifted, and but having that moment allows me to get out of my head, because along with that consistency, it makes me very narrow thinking, especially in
Mhm.
um, business. I get very I I forget to question the basic stuff. So I'll say I've got to do that, I've got to do that, I've got to do that. Whereas when I have that time off, I go, oh no, I don't need to do that. That's not actually a thing. I've made it a thing in my
Yeah.
head. And it having both of those worlds is yeah, quite interesting, because I didn't think it was a thing for me. So and I don't really know how it came out. I think it was my environment, how I lived my life around my family. I moved away from them 10 years ago, and my family are amazing, but they have certain ways of being. And I think
Mhm.
when you can take yourself out of the environment, you try and connect more with who you are. Sometimes you don't want to connect with who you are. You're just forced to do that because you don't have any other option.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but it allowed me to experiment. I wasn't trying to prove to anyone that I was a good boy, or that I could do everything consistently, or I could make money, etc. And it just gave me that little, let's say 10%, just to go, okay, I'm going to do this a little bit different. Now, it doesn't sound as maybe, if I say extreme, I don't think your way is extreme. I think it's very clever. But in my world, it was actually a way of um, uh, just looking at myself a little bit better, and just challenging some of that stuff. And like you said, that structure. If you don't have that structure, creativity is. I always thought creativity was with freedom, but if you have all freedom, it's almost chaos. And so if you can create your structure where you can be creative, like your time where you can be creative, that's cool, right? That's how it makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Do you find yourself still struggling to convince yourself that the week off is necessary? Do you have any like internal arguments about making that week?
So it's strange now, because I've committed to doing these lives for a year.
Mhm.
I hold myself accountable for that. There is no one. I'm not being paid for this, so excuse me, the only person that's holding me accountable is me. No one's going to care. No one's going to go, "Oh, you didn't do that." But I want to prove to myself that doing this for a year
Mhm.
consistently in what I've said either gives me some results or no results. And if I'm sporadic in what I've said, then I don't feel that I've properly tested it.
Mhm.
So a lot of my stuff is about experimenting. Now that's come with some challenges because I'm currently in France, in this beautiful island, with my two kids and my girlfriend, and I want to switch off. My brain wants to switch off, but I also wanted to have this conversation. So
Yeah.
there's these arguments in my head. It's like, oh, okay, be fully present with your kids. No, show up and do your lives, but you can intertwine those. You don't, it doesn't
Yeah.
need to be, again, my thinking is all or nothing. You can say, right, okay, what is the minimum that you need to do to get this done? And my girlfriend took the kids for a bike ride and for a walk to the shops, and she was super okay with it. And I was like, "Oh,
Mm.
okay, yeah, this can be done." And I had this thought of, okay, this is going to be a problem. We're on holiday. Everyone wants you to disconnect, disconnect, disconnect. And I was like, okay, but you can do it. It doesn't need to be this huge impact. But I think the biggest wrestle of all of that is in my mind. Honestly, it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. It's one of the most common things. Like when I talk to people when I've got a coaching hat on, um, a lot of the things that I'm asking are like, why are you being so bloody hard on yourself? Like, why are you putting so much pressure on yourself? And it's so easy to just default to like for whatever reason, like whatever your motivation is. It's often the sort of negative comments that the motivation says that makes people get into that overwork or get into that thing. And the thing that I really like doing is having conversations around that particular thing. Like, so why have you got to force yourself to do like if you were I need to do this every day at a certain time, like why would you put that much pressure on yourself? And it from speaking to you, it seems like you've almost had to wrestle and sort of let go a little bit of
Yeah,
the sort of tenseness around trying to create a thing and earn money and do all of these things. And that's a really hard thing to do. Like that, it's almost sort of hyper exposing in a way because you just have to let things be. And
yeah,
that's super hard. But I think that's a really important thing that you have to go through, right? To get to a working environment that properly works for you as a person, you do have to be exposed. You do have to let go of a little bit of that control and stop being as tense. But 10 times out of 10, the thought is worse than the thing. Like it's
yeah,
never as bad as you expect it to be.
yeah,
Um, and that's what I really love about the sort of creativity that taking it into a corporate world. So I work for nearly a 200-year-old financial services company, and that can be scary because it's like legacy, right? And it's financial services is so important that things are safe. So when I'm coming in saying something that seems ridiculous, or I'm starting a presentation talking about the arithmetics, which is an actual presentation that I've done, and then got that back to talking about internal strategy. Um, it seems ridiculous, but helping people get out of their default sort of tension in their brain is, I think, a great route to better answers or different answers, more
yeah,
creative answers. And that I absolutely love that about my job.
yeah. That's I think again, coming from the corporate world, everything's done a certain way, right?
Mhm.
And you're gonna get the same results. And we're just pushing for 10% better. But I think having someone like you excuse me, come in and, just really if I say throw a curveball, it's not. It's just, someone's throwing up a presentation on there and you see like so many bullet points and your brain just switches off, right? Well, mine
Yeah.
does at least. And but just having someone that just brings a different thing in and, talking about arrhythmics, and you go, oh, okay, they're going to remember that, right? And they're going to go, oh, I remember that presentation. I'm not going to remember the thousands of others that just were boring and I could have read them rather than turning up for the presentation. And I think that's we're often scared of this question, why? And I worked in projects for a long time, and it can be hard to keep asking that why. There was this thing I heard, like these 7 whys. Why do you want to do that? But why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do that? And that can feel very combative, like, you're sort of saying, but you can only really get to the true answer if you keep asking that why. And it's a bit, I think people see it like, when your kids ask you, well, why is this? Why is this? Why is this? And it can be very frustrating. But as the person asking the question, you want to get to the true answer. But when it comes, people can be very resistant, right? In that, and that can feel challenging. But like you say, you get better answers if you ask better questions and go deeper. And it might feel uncomfortable, but your results will be, rather than going, okay, we're going to go like this, you ask a better question here and you can go up here and, I want to say limitless. But I think like you say, in like the corporate world, big change can feel risky.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it doesn't need to be. It's hugely risky to stay doing the same thing all the time, because it might feel safe today, but you become irrelevant in 10 years. And I think I see that in a lot of businesses that aren't changing. They're telling their staff to come in and be the same way as they used to be, and not embracing new ways of doing things.
And you've hit upon a really important thing. One of the important models that I try to utilize wherever possible is that framing. Like, when you mentioned that, like, it seems scary, so we shouldn't do it, but actually the reframing of what if we didn't do this is more dangerous. And I work at the moment in a design team, sort of corporate arts and crafts, if you like, is what we often get dismissed as. But we have the way in which we talk about things is we try and frame things completely differently, so that we're not talking about KPIs, or we're not talking about how we can serve more customers online or whatever that might be. We try and frame things from the person who is affected. So for insurance, for example, just generally, not talking about my company specifically, but effectively the thing that someone is buying is a piece of paper that says, if the worst thing that you could ever imagine happened, we would look after your family. Like, they wouldn't have to move house as well as losing you, or like, what would your kids do in this situation? And framing that as actually insurance is a bit of, it's peace of mind that you're buying, and same with a pension and an investment and all of these sorts of things. A pension is someone working in a job they probably don't like for a long time, so that they can eventually afford to spend more time walking around forests with their dog. Like, that's a superhuman thing. If we're talking about how do we interface between this DB2 and this other thing in IT, like, we've absolutely missed the point, which is this person cares a lot, and they have had to just smile when their boss makes terrible jokes for 30 years so that they can get this thing, this freedom, this peace of mind. That is how we have the right conversations. That is how we deliver solutions that are human based, not like just pure KPIs. And the irony being that actually it's better business to think that way. Like, good research is risk mitigation. If I went into a presentation and said, these are all the risks and these are why they're risks, and we're mitigating these, that language people switch off. But actually, it's really important that we talk about things in a way that people can understand. And this goes back to the conversation about education. Tailoring the conversation to the people that you're talking to is only going to get more and more important. This cookie cutter thing of like only people with risk in their title can talk about risks, which I see happening quite a lot, or you can't get involved in this process because you're not this job title, those sorts of things. It's just creating an industry of people that can't get into the right rooms because they haven't got the right letters on their name or whatever. But that in itself is causing these huge risks where we can't talk about. So if someone isn't going to make their mobile app like responsive, their website mobile responsive, sorry, then you're cutting off a large chunk of your business case. You might as well document that as a risk. If you're not making it accessible for screen readers, then Google says 1 in 4 people have got accessibility needs. So effectively, you're writing off 25% of your business case. Is that how you want to go about things? And that's where I love using reframes, because we're so used to, as you said, just using these sort of default mental models. This is how we've always done it, especially in financial services. Anything else is crazy. Let's just keep plodding on. But the world has changed more than these companies. And I think that's where it's exciting.
Yeah, I love that. There's so one of the reasons I wanted to have all these conversations was that I believe that the old ways of doing things don't work, and I love coming across people that think differently, think of new ways, and not just to be antagonistic, but there's some genuine value behind it. And as you were talking, I was reminded. So when I started my banking career, there were some banking exams, and I took a few. Then I took like this quite a big banking exam. It basically allowed me to trade if I wanted to, and it didn't change anything for me in my career. Didn't have any impact. And I put all this effort in. I felt good about myself for a small period, and then I don't know, rightly or wrongly, I was expecting, okay, now I've proven myself, I can show up at the table and I'll get a pay rise or status. And I realized quite quickly it had no impact. And also on the other end, I know people that did a similar exam, and I remember you would not want them managing your money. They were good. They were good at repeating stuff. They were not people you would hand your money to. Yet passing this exam allowed them to do it. So this association with exams, like titles, certificates, and I understand they're good, to bring awareness, but we associate, okay, you can't help people if you haven't got this, or I understand you don't want a surgeon who hasn't qualified and doesn't understand the body when he's cutting you open. I get all that. But I also think there is this huge part of the world where people feel that they can't start their own business, or they can't help, or they can't sit at the table, or they're not allowed to sit at the table and have a huge impact on that business. And I keep coming up with this example of like job descriptions. So I've been in so many companies, I've written job descriptions. I'm not saying that I know everything. I don't, but I've seen job descriptions, which is basically a wish list that you want this person to do. And ultimately, it's one that you've either regurgitated from 10 years ago when you hired someone, or someone's leaving and you're just writing all the skills that they could do. But it's not that. What you should be looking at is what's missing from your area. You want someone to challenge, not maybe just say yes, or that thinks differently, or someone from a retail perspective rather than a corporate world. You want to think to get different results. You need someone else in that's going to come and challenge you. But I truly believe there are so many people out there that can do this. They just haven't been given the opportunity to do it, and they've almost been told that they can't because there's a need to get this qualification. University degree used to be a thing when I was looking for jobs. It's like, well, no, you need to start right at the bottom. Why? I've come across loads of people. This isn't against the university system, but I've come across loads of people in the university, came out of university degrees in history. Great, they're working in banking. Okay, does that help you do that job better? It doesn't. So I think if we can change the mindset and be open-minded about giving people a chance, allowing people to bring a different perspective, and again, not just to say, "Oh, we're doing it," but to be open-minded, to consider different views. And I think that will really help change the way that we do business, change the way that I show up, that I feel that I can bring. I don't know if it's possible to bring 100% of who you are. I'm not sure, but sure. A big reason why I'm doing this is because I couldn't find it anywhere else. I couldn't find the thing that I wanted to do. I had to create it for myself.
Yeah. No, and I'm sort of seeing more and more of that. And similar to you, I'm super interested by the way that businesses set up and the way that systems work and the way that everything sort of folds together. And on the subject of like education in particular, I think it's kind of telling that in most situations, you can't just purchase an exam. So we force people to pay for the entire lecture series. You have to go and sit in a place and learn from one person telling you their one perspective on things and how they think about things, rather than allowing people to be able to learn in a way that is most applicable to them, and then doing an exam, writing papers, whatever it is, using the traditional grading system, fine. But my learning on the job or learning through podcasts or whatever should be of no lesser value than someone sitting in a proper pew style like lecture hall. It just doesn't sit right to me. But what I'm seeing, especially in businesses and with technology and AI, I think it's a really exciting time, because you've got a lot more sort of smaller businesses that are able to function as if they were a larger business. And where you've got people like yourself who are able to write your own rule book and to be able to take things that you've learned and apply them in a way that suits you, I think that is a really interesting era of new business. And the fact that, and we spoke about this sort of before going live, but COVID was really interesting in helping people see a different world that they could live in. Like, obviously it was horrific and I'm not glorifying it in any way, but one of the positive outcomes was people got to spend a lot of time with their pets and adopt dogs and make bread and like just lean into things that interest them. And then there's quite a resistance to going back to the office in certain situations. Some people love it, fine. Some people don't love it. But those two things can coexist, and business still functions. The businesses trying to force people back into the office or force everyone remote are both the wrong thing, in my opinion. And what I'm seeing is that there are more and more people who are going, you know what, this old structure doesn't give me everything that I need. I'm going to go on my own and trying to learn things. And that's exactly the situation in which sort of I am in at the moment, in that I learn a lot from my employment, really enjoy it. I couldn't have learned the things that I've learned had I not worked in somewhere where change is hard, change is slow, people don't want these things. Like, I've had to learn to be really resilient, but that's a really useful thing. That's not a negative thing. That's a great thing. I love that I've learned that from there. And it's now I'm on sort of trying to find my way in the world. I'm starting to see that there are sort of little sprouting communities. I'm a member of one called The Halt, and it's small business owners that are trying to figure out how to be their own enterprise on their own. So like they might not have skills in marketing or might not have skills in sales. And these smaller sort of community hubs that are built, like popping up, that are acting as if they're sort of faux departments in your own company. And that's the place that was missing for me in particular, because I just decided I've gone through a lot of shit. I've got to a position where I'm kind of happy with where I am, and I enjoy doing the things that I do. I know that there are probably people on the step before me, and I could maybe give them advice that I would have liked in that situation and help them maybe have a bit of a less shit time. Great.
Yeah.
I would love that. So I've decided that, and then I've gone, so I'll learn how to be a coach, do all the courses, do all those things, fine. Then I've got to find customers and write a landing page and write a bio and social media, all of these things. There's so much. And if I was in a company, someone would take care of that, but I would get a small slice of the pie. But I kind of want the whole pie now. And I like learning about things. These things are scary, but they're not going to kill me. So let's just do more of the scary things. If I'm not going to die, let's just do more like lives and put posts on LinkedIn or put things on Instagram. Learning about business on your own is a bit of a different beast from learning about it within a corporate structure. But I think going back to the conversation around how the system isn't really meant for everyone, I think that's a natural answer. Like it's a natural rebellion to the system. Like, fine, you do the corporate thing and you have the cookie cutter career and those sorts of things. I'm going to go over here and laugh with these oddballs and have a great time and be my own self. And I say oddballs because it's the most beautiful thing when people realize that they can just relax into themselves and not have to have this mask. And I can't remember if I've mentioned it, I'm ADHD autistic, and with that it's super useful, but it's also super difficult because like masking is a bitch. And I'm from a small fishing town on the south coast where everyone swears and fights their uncle on a Friday night. Like I'm not from the sort of pinstripe financial services. It's a new world. So I've had to learn to pretend to fit into that room, to have my opinions of any value. But those sorts of things are going away now, and people are leaning into their own personality. Like, how do you cut through on LinkedIn? You just be yourself and you talk to people in your own voice. And I'm sort of really excited by the fact that people are able to do things that they love in a way that they love doing it on their own terms. But that's surely only good for business. Yeah.
So there's quite a bit in that that I really resonate with. It's strange. So I was let go of my job about 1.5 years ago. I was unemployed and then tried to start different sort of avenues of business. And but one of the things that I really struggled with is that I still felt tied to the corporate world, as in I couldn't say what I wanted to because I thought, people would disagree. And so I'll give you a very, very simple example. I was going to do this live, and I was like, can I wear a baseball cap? Is that unprofessional? How stupid is that? I've been indoctrinated into this prison of what is professional and what is not, and I'm like, just do what the fuck you want. Like, just show up, man. Like, because, and it's we have this thing that, if you swear or you don't wear a suit or you don't look a certain way, then you don't fit in and then business won't work. But actually, you being you, I think the other people feel that, they can see that, and you connect with it. You if I say let go, but you let go in such a good way that you haven't got that filter. But to break away from something that you've been doing for most of your life is really challenging. Like it can be very scary because you go, oh, okay, what happens if I need to go back to the corporate world? Like, well, shit, what's going to happen? And I'm still not there. But I'm learning bit by bit just to do it my way. And every time I do, I'm like, yep, feels fucking great because no one's telling me what to do. That I do the scary stuff, but I do it when I want to, and it feels good because I've often been told to do stuff which is a bit scary, but it wasn't for my benefit; it was for someone else's benefit. Whereas this is for my benefit. This is okay. I'm going to put myself out. I'm going to do this or whatever. But it feels good, and you go, okay. I'm okay if it doesn't work out. Because I'll learn and I will have done it my way, and that would have felt very genuine. Where I've really struggled is when I've been put into a situation to do something and then I get negative feedback. I go, oh, that wasn't that good. And you go, but I didn't want to do it in the first place. And so similar to you, I'm not saying that the corporate world hasn't given me so much, because it really, really has. It got me where I am now. But now's the point where, okay, I've done all that. I've learned that. I know what I like, what I don't like. I know what scares me or which way I want to go. I'm going to lean into that and see what comes out of it. And I've done this with no incentive. I'm not selling anything. There's no end. I'm not trying to get so many followers. There is zero metrics in this for me. I'm just going to try for a year to do it my way. And almost that experiment of, okay, is it okay what I'm doing? And I can adjust along the way, do more lives, do less lives if if I'm finding it's too hard. But just do this. Just do what you feel is good. And I love these conversations. I love speaking to people like you, and I love, you've said things that have challenged my thinking, which is great. When we work in a company and we're told to think the same way, you just get the same answers, but that's not going to make the progress that we need.
No, completely agree.
Yeah, nice. So we've run to the hour, or just a little bit over the hour. Glenn, I want to say huge thank you for this. This was really amazing. You have such a unique style. You have a very sultry voice. I've got my AirPods in, and it's like honey in my ears, man. It's I can imagine the people that listen to you are don't want it to end. So again, I'm grateful for you showing up. I know you thought that maybe this was beyond you, but I don't think this. I think that you are absolutely on the right path. I think we need more people like you to bring this wisdom, seeing things differently, connecting these dots, because I think having people like you and being connected with people like you will really, really help people. And I 100%, I know there is a huge audience out there for you that you will be able to help. And you do it in such a nice way. It's not you're not just being combative. You're just questioning some of those normal things that aren't really normal, and we've just taken them for being normal. So just want to say a huge thank you for making the time for me. I do appreciate it very much.
And I really appreciate your jam as well. Having these conversations is so important, and anyone that chooses to listen, or anyone that chooses to talk to you about these things, they're like, everyone is so tense with what they think everyone else is struggling with, or they think that they need to compare themselves to these people who have got this beautiful house and all of these sorts of things. But everyone can just relax a little bit, that it's okay to go at your own pace. It's okay to do the things that you like. You're living your own life. Finding your own groove is a good thing to do. And people don't realize that it's themselves that give them the permission to do those sorts of things. So you having these conversations is really important. It's fundamental. A lot of times in people realizing that actually, yeah, I'm doing that and I'm making myself uncomfortable because of some made up fairy tale of what society should be. So thank you for doing these things as well.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate your kind words. Fantastic. So the best place for people to find you, because if people are watching this, I'm sure there's going to be people that want to find out more about you. So where's the best place for people to find you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it a website? What's the best place?
Yeah, it's LinkedIn, Glenn Middleton, or Think Parachute as a business. You'll be able to see a bright red parachute as my logo on Think Parachute on LinkedIn, and thinkparachute.com as well is my website, or you can email me at info@thinkparachute.com. I'd be happy to chat to anyone.
Amazing. So I will link you in the repost of this afterwards, so people, if they don't find you, but you were very easy to find on LinkedIn, if I'm honest. So yeah, I'll repost it, and hopefully people connect with you.
Fingers crossed.
Okay.
Thanks again for the opportunity. Lovely to chat.
Yeah, you too, Glenn. I really appreciate it, man. Take care, yeah?
Cheers. See you later.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.